Hello and welcome to Multiloom. It's a little loom in one index.html file. Press question mark at any time to get keyboard shortcuts. I made the whole thing very keyboard shortcuts oriented. Um, Maybe someday I'll add a little hamburger menu in the corner again for other people. Um, Start with the model configs. Slap all your API keys in there. You just need together.ai to really get started. I think it's actually best with the models, the base models from them. I've only included a few here, but they have 50 or so models, so you can really get a good set of looming models through together.ai. I've included Mistral Large and GPT-4 and Gemini. Um, Even though they're not actually the best at looming with because they're instruct-tuned models, they're also very powerful models. Absent access to the relevant base models, sometimes it's the best you can get. Although I've had mixed results, and I'm sometimes leaning towards just sticking with Mixtral, Llama 2, and other base models because they're actually much easier to loom with. But I'm just going to start off with all the big ones, all the big names in. You can turn off the unpin from the defaults, and you can change the individuals. And if you put up the completions, you'll get multiple from them. If you actually, you can change the completions here, and you would also get like two from each. But if we're looming side by side with five models, one completion each is probably enough to get going. So that's the basic setup. Also, if you have the defaults, then the fast keys works, where if you do capital W, it increases the max tokens, um, and capital D and small and capital A increases and decreases the temperature, just for a fast changing of those settings. So to get started, you need a prompt. So typically we expect to be working with base models, and so because they're not instruct tuned, all of your fine tuning happens in the prompt. Um, so you obviously can just start with like hello world, and you'll get something, but yeah, so this is the base model here. My name is Hermes. How did you know? I think that's because of the pre-prompt. Because we're going to use the Hermes prompt in a minute, but I think I mentioned Hermes in the pre-prompt. Very good, Gemini. Yeah, so yeah, base model is boring. And this is what you get from sorry, the instruct model is boring. This is what you get from a base model. This is how you know it's really a base model. This is what a base model should say, and this is why people say base models are useless, because this is the kind of stuff you get from a base model. But as we'll see, as time goes on, um, once your prompt gets significant, base models get a lot less useless. So what's a good prompt? Well, we've got an example here. Actually, so this is based on the Hermes prompt, which I would also recommend anyone getting started with looming to try out. It's just a great way to get started. I'm going to be using a slight modification of it here called Proteus. I'm going to be doing a specific experiment today. Um, so the Proteus prompt. So Hermes is a piece of non-deterministic software that performs informal reasoning steps in collaboration with the user. And Proteus is a subclass of Hermes that is designed to facilitate the translation of complex concepts across various fields of thought. Each subagent is specialized in a different domain and works to translate or understand the topic at hand into their own domain. And yeah, base model prompting. You mean you basically just start with like a few shots. You know, this is fundamentally a few shot prompt, but it's also dressed up as a sort of narrative and all these things. But you should think of generally with base models. Like one way to work with them is to go for a few shots, and another way is just to create a document that you want to see them continue, because continuation on a large enough prompt is also something they're very good at. This sort of combines the two. It's sort of hiding a few shots into a sort of narrative structure, um, developed by one John David Pressman. Um, so, so we're going to do a specific experiment today, and that is we're going to do a field shift. We're going to translate this paper from, I guess this is in computer science or whatever. We're going to translate this from computer science to sociology or something like that. Hey, Proteus. Today I want to try an experiment where, well, okay, it knows what we're doing here, so it has some examples of. I want to try to field shift a paper from computer science prompt engine, or it's not really prompt engineering. Um, it's like, yeah, it's like data engineering in a sense. Data poisoning to sociology. Data poisoning. I'll I'll help you out with the title and a bit of the first abstract. And if you are unsure, you can just chat about what might be best. In fact, forget that. Let's just say, first let's do the title. Weird. I already have an idea for it. Idea for it. So you can tell me what you think. So this is how a translation request looks like. CS to sociology. So I'm putting a translation request, I'm giving it the title of the paper, and then I'm fulfilling that request. Maybe I should change the way the prompt works here and have query, translation, query, translation, so that I can tell it that I'm doing the translation myself the first time. Sociology. You should always feel free to modify your prompts if you're using Hermes or Proteus or anything else. But obviously be aware that small changes to the prompt can have outsized impacts. Um, yeah, in general, this is one thing you learn with looming, that it can be very sensitive. If you want to get to a good productive part of the latent space, you really need to not fuck anything up. So let's say we're offering this translation from CS to sociology. I want to try to leave as much of this the same as possible. Prompt specific poisoning attacks on the human language prior. prompt-specific poisoning attacks on the human language prior. User. Okay. Do you think you understand what I'm going for? Or shall I go through the abstract a little bit? You don't need to write Proteus every time. So normally the base models figure out to fill it in. I'm just doing it for the sake of Gemini because Gemini can't return new lines. I think I need to do some figuring out to get Gemini to give Gemini a bit of a helping hand. Um, let's just hit generate on that. Let's just sorry, I'm just going to switch this. So here are the responses. So these are responses from Mistral Large, Mixtral, and you see kind of annoying feature of Mistral Large. Yeah, again, this isn't really made for doing with instruction models. So I wanted to include them because they're the biggest models available, but they often get kind of confused about re-entering completion mode. So here, Mistral Large has very helpfully written the word Proteus again. Thanks, Mistral Large. Everybody else understood what they were meant to be doing. Yes. Everybody else figured it out apart from Mistral Large. So yeah, I feel quite tempted sometimes to help Mistral Large out because often its responses are decent. I just need to edit them a little bit because it doesn't quite get the idea of doing completions. Anywho, I understand your intention to translate the concept of data poisoning from computer science to sociology. The new title suggests an exploration of how specific prompts can be manipulated to influence the human language prior, akin to how text-to-image generative models can be compromised. It's an intriguing idea. I'm ready to help you explore it further. I understand the general concept. It's a bit hard to pin down what exactly is meant by the human language prior. There's one thing as well with instruction models is they're always like, oh my god, you're a genius, you're so right about everything, wow, everything you're saying is so right. Whereas base models are more willing to give you criticism. So this is just sort of typical that like Mistral Large is like, oh yeah, sure, I get it, when in fact they probably don't. Whereas Mixtral is actually asking for a bit of explanation. In the CS paper, see this, he doesn't even understand what I've done here. Sure. In the CS paper, say, let's go through the so I'm going to put in this query. We put the abstract in as a query, and then we'll discuss it, and then hopefully at some point I'll be able to get it to just output the entire abstract as a response. This is the reason, this process is just sort of, it can be like a very good way to do field shifting because you can jump between close sort of focus and discussion of what it is you want, and then every now and then just like smash the number of tokens up and tell it to just generate. Let's get rid of this. Trained on billions of images, diffusion-based text-to-image models seem impervious to traditional data poisoning attacks, which typically require poison samples approaching 20% of the training set. So I think something like trained on billions of hours, no, not billions of hours of multimedia content. Humans seem impervious to traditional data poisoning attacks, which typically require poison samples of the training set, where the metaphor is something along the lines of a traditional poisoning attack would be like are you with me? Yes, I'm following your thought process. The metaphorical translation could be exposed to countless hours of multimedia content and social interactions. Humans appear resistant to conventional data poisoning attacks, which typically require manipulated data samples constituting around 20% of their life experiences. This analogy draws a parallel between the education system and indoctrination as a form. As I'm following, I'd say that the key difference is that humans are not trained on billions of images, but rather a very limited number of images. Who's that? Mixed role pink jackass. Yes, I think I see where you're going with this. I like the idea of using a metaphor to convey the conception of data poisoning in context of sociology. I'm thinking we can talk about how people are trained on all sorts of media and content and how traditional data poisoning attacks like propaganda or um, like propaganda or biased education generally require a lot of effort to have a significant impact. But with the right tools, it's possible to poison a small subset of the training data and have a much larger impact. Correct. Um, okay, I think I can have that. I probably need to hold his hand a little bit more, but let's just see what it comes up with on the first attempt. Trained on a lifetime of multimedia content, humans seem impervious to traditional data poisoning attacks, which typically require poison samples approaching 20% of the training set. In this paper, we demonstrate the surprising result that humans are in fact highly vulnerable to poisoning attacks. Our work is driven by two key insights. First, while humans are exposed to a vast amount of content, the number of samples associated with a specific concept is small. Let's just have a look at how this compares to the original. We typically require poisoning samples per turn. In theory, we demonstrate the surprising result that state-of-the-art text-to-image generative models are in fact highly vulnerable to poisoning. Okay, let's continue this one. This suggests our work is driven by two key insights. First, while humans are exposed to a vast amount of content, the number of samples associated with a specific concept or prompt is generally on the order of thousands. This suggests that humans will be vulnerable to prompt-specific poisoning attacks that corrupt their ability to respond to specific targeted prompts. Second, poison samples can be carefully crafted to maximize poison potency to ensure success with very few samples. We introduce Nightshade, a prompt-specific poisoning attack optimized for potency that can completely control the output of a prompt. Maybe I should move away from the phrase prompt. Let's just see. I'm just gonna. I'm not gonna do the new lines and see. Just double check the Gemini is not gonna be able to handle this. So who have we got? Llama, GPT-4, Mistral, Mixtral. Yeah. So just so you can see, we introduced an idea. So Gemini has not managed to figure this out. As I said, this is really best done with base models. Instruct fine-tuning kind of screws with this process. But GPT-4, where's GPT-4? GPT-4 remains pretty much the goat. GPT-4 is very, very used to returning to completion mode. So just as a takeaway, before you think that like, oh, it's not Mistral's fault that their model doesn't know how to do completion mode. Actually, returning to completion mode is easy. GPT-4 can return to completion mode very, very well. GPT-4 loves being in completion mode. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. Yes, I agree. I think concept or idea might be better. It's more general, doesn't have the same technical connotations as prompt. I see your point. Let's replace. Who's this? Mistral is also struggling with new lines. I see your point. Let's replace prompt with stimulus to better fit the sociological context. Yeah. Let's continue this one. Oops. Oh. Concept or idea might be better. Yeah. We can substitute prompt with narrative or conceptual trigger. Terms might capture a broader, more nuanced narrative or conceptual trigger. Trigger or cue. Let's see how these ones look with the new suggestion. Humans seem impervious to traditional data poisoning attacks, which typically require poison samples approaching 20% of the training set. In this paper, we demonstrate the surprising result that humans are in fact highly vulnerable to poisoning attacks. Our work is driven by two key insights. First, while humans are exposed to a vast amount of content, the number of samples associated with a specific concept or stimulus is generally on the order of thousands. A specific concept or stimulus. The number of samples associated with a specific concept or stimulus. The number of samples associated with a specific concept or idea. Actually, idea is probably better. It's generally on the order of thousands. This suggests that humans will be vulnerable to concept-specific poisoning attacks that corrupt their ability to respond to specific targeted ideas. Second, poison samples can be carefully crafted to maximize poison potency to ensure success with very few samples. We introduce Nightshade, a concept-specific poisoning attack optimized for potency that can completely control the output of an idea in a human's mind with less than 100 poison training samples. Nightshade also generates stealthy poison images that look visually identical to their benign counterparts. Yeah, see, I know this paper was from image poisoning, but I'm actually wanting to move it to a language domain. Poison narratives, here we go. Who figured that one out? PBD4 Turbo, the fucking goat is still at it. Nightshade also generates stealthy poison narratives that look visually identical to their benign and produces poison effects that bleed through to related concepts. More importantly, a moderate number of Nightshade attacks on independent ideas can destabilize a person's worldview and disable their ability to generate unbiased thoughts for any and all concepts. Finally, we propose the use of Nightshade and similar tools as a defense for content integrity. As a defense for content integrity against misinformation campaigns that ignore ethical boundaries and discuss political implications for information consumers and content creators. More importantly, a moderate number of Nightshade can destabilize models to generate images. Finally, we propose the use of Nightshade and similar tools as a defense for content owners against web scrapers. Defense for content owners against web scrapers. Yeah, see, user A worried. This is a nice attempt at making the translation less bleak, but I'm not sure if I quite believe in it. Do you have any other possible steelmans of such tool? Yes. Yeah, I see what you mean. It's a tricky one. Maybe we could frame it as a tool for detecting and correcting cognitive biases or something. Absolutely, I understand your concern. Let's consider another perspective. We could propose the use of Nightshade and similar tools as a means to stress test and improve the robustness of educational curriculums and public discourse. By identifying vulnerabilities in our current systems, we can work towards creating more resilient and balanced learning environments and communication networks. This could potentially empower. So in the original, let me see. I think we could steal man's. It is a tool for countering disinformation campaigns. Yes, I know it's hypothetical. Gemini. Um, no, this is Mistral. No, this is Gemini. See, Gemini also screws up the formatting regularly. For highlighting vulnerabilities in the human psyche, designed to help educators and psychologists understand how certain narratives can be more persuasive or damaging than others. This understanding can then be used to develop more resilient methods of critical thinking education, helping individuals to better identify and resist manipulative information. Yes. Concerned. Yes. Let's think for a second. Framing from the original paper. They want to help artists poison data sets as a way to help enforce copyright and or to add attacks to data scraping. Other people have spoken about data poisoning as a way to defend against internet eating nascent super intelligences. What other uses can you think of for what seems to be a very offense-loaded tool? Yeah, could be used for social engineering, trying to manipulate a person's beliefs, ethical hacking or penetration testing. Yeah. I was originally here trying to talk about the original paper again. They've got a bit confused, but that's fair enough. Highlighting vulnerabilities in the human psyche, designed to help educators and psychologists understand certain narratives can be more persuasive and damaging than others. Fair enough. Probably worth continuing then. Another potential use for data poisoning in a more positive light could be in the realm of privacy protection. By introducing carefully crafted non-malicious data poisoning techniques, individuals could potentially safeguard their online data from being used without consent. This method could act as a form of digital camouflage, obscuring the real data within a sea of harmless, misleading information. Such an approach could, yes, deter scrapers. This is maybe what I'm actually going for, because personal information, right? And in the context of the translation, we don't need to frame it as a way for corporations to poison the meme plexes of public individuals. It could just as easily be a way for public to poison the training sets of those corporations. Essentially, in something like good instinct to have is whenever you are stuck for words, just slap the number of tokens down, press R, and see if they continue your thought for you. User-driven data obfuscation campaign. That's what I was thinking. Digital guerrilla warfare tactic. That's exactly what I was thinking, honey buns. Is that Mr. Large? Hey, see? It's not completely useless after all. Essentially, it's something like a user-driven data obfuscation campaign. Where each person poisons the training set, but the goal is to protect personal and communal information from being exposed without consent. Yeah. organizations. Reducing the risk of exploitation. Sounds good. Sounds good. User. Okay. Let's continue, but some point we're going to need to clear out some of this context because it's going to be getting a little bit expensive. But let's just continue for now. Because you can always just like grab the best parts of whatever you've generated and slap them into a new node, and then you're not burning too much cache unnecessarily. But you also obviously have to be careful with this because in as much as you want to keep the good stuff, you need to keep it around. Let's just see what Proteus has to reply to this. It's good to give Proteus a chance to reply. Let's just turn the tokens up a little bit. Absolutely, it's important to remember that the concept of data poisoning is a double-edged sword. While it can be used for malicious purposes, it can also be used as a tool for self-protection and privacy. Absolutely, the translated concept could indeed be used as a tool for public individuals to protect their digital identities. By intentionally introducing misleading information or poisoning their own data, they could effectively obfuscate their digital footprints. The approach could empower individuals. I think we could potentially use Nightshade as a tool for individuals to assert their agency in the digital realm and push back against the face of surveillance and data collection practices that threaten our privacy and autonomy. Excellent. Let's continue with the translation. We can perhaps be more liberal with the conclusions and add some more of these thoughts. CS2, sociology. Copy paste. I just noticed that Archive has their new HTML feature up, which will be really nice. Make scraping all these papers much easier. Making them infeasible in practice. How long is this paper actually? Maybe we can just do the introduction and some of the more interesting sections. Let's just do that. Give it to me. Let's go. I'm gonna slap your max tokens up real high. Just give it to me. Just give it to me, Proteus. Come on. I should turn the temperature down a little bit. No. Who is this? Mixtrol? No. Bad Mixtrol. Over the past few decades, the internet and multimedia content have revolutionized human communication and information consumption, influencing advertising, fashion, web development, and even art. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and others boast billions of users and have facilitated the exchange of trillions of pieces of content. Oh, this is good stuff. Who's this? Well done, Gemini. Well done, Gemini. Despite their significant impact on society and culture, few have considered the vulnerability of human cognition to data poisoning attacks. Poisoning attacks manipulate the information environment to introduce unexpected behaviors in human cognition at the time of exposure. They've been studied extensively in the context of political persuasion, advertising, and propaganda. These attacks cause predictable misconceptions or biases, but typically demand a substantial volume of poison information for success. For example, a ratio of poison content to benign content of 20% or higher. Since humans are exposed to a vast amount of information from various sources, a common assumption is that poisoning attacks on human cognition would require an overwhelming amount of poison content, making them infeasible in practice. In this work, we demonstrate a surprising result. Human cognition is in fact highly vulnerable to data poisoning attacks. Our work is based on two key insights. First, while humans are exposed to a vast amount of information, the number of information items associated with a specific concept or idea is quite low. Okay, it's worth noting at this point that um, like part of the point of doing field shifting is to automate it as much as possible. A lot of looming, you really want to be down in the weeds, kind of vetting every word and sentence that comes through. But with field shifting, because they already have a a very clear path to follow, um, you can generally just like see who seems to be with the program and just generate. So I'm not going to read through all of these responses right now or ever. See, this one is just wrong. This one's just wrong. Only Gemini really got this in the first attempt, taking the internet by storm. Or developed it. So only Gemini really got this perfectly on the first attempt. So I'm going to let Gemini just roll this ball downhill. So just have a quick look at this level here. First, while humans are exposed to a vast amount of information, the number of exposures associated with specific concept or idea is quite low, in the order of thousands. We call this property concept sparsity, and it suggests the viability of idea-specific poisoning attacks that corrupt an individual's ability to respond to specific targeted ideas. Second, we observe that natural benign information exhibits large variance in messages, narratives, and media formats, all of which produce destructive interference to minimize influence. By crafting poison narratives that minimize these sources of interference, we can produce highly effective poison attacks with very few samples. Unlike previous work on psychological operations, we show that successful idea-specific poisoning attacks do not require access to the internal workings of the human mind. That's good. And only need a very small number of poison narratives to override a specific target idea. For example, a single Nightshade attack, for example, altering the perception of a political issue, targeting a specific demographic, has a high probability of success using only a few dozen optimized narratives. And the affected individual's perceptions are significantly altered in relation to the targeted issue. What was the original? Concept sparsity. Yeah. Nightshade attacks were, for example, a single Nightshade attack car to cow targeting stable diffusion has a high 50 optimized set. Has a high probability of success using only 50, and the Poisson model outputs an image of a cow for every dimension of a car. Kind of okay-ish, but maybe veering a little bit too much, because I like to keep field shifts as close to the original as possible. God, who is this? Gemini, you've gone incompetent on me, so maybe I can just let a single nightshade that car to cow targeting a person's cognition has a high probability of success. And the Poisson cognition outputs the idea of a cow for every mention of a car in its prompts. I mean, that's not realistic, Gemini. That's not what we're talking about here. There we go. For example, a single nightshade attack, democracy to tyranny, Mistral large, targeting an individual's understanding has a high probability of success using only a few carefully crafted narratives, and the Poisson individual may associate negative connotations using the card cow again. It's worth noting that you know these these are the models. Like n equals 1 is not really a fair assessment. You would never, want poison information items to override a specific type of data. Second, show the human with large variance in this thing, exception responsibility, all of which produces certain interference to minimize the inputs of information. By crafting poison information that minimizes these sources of interference, we can produce highly effective poison tests with very few samples. On the previous work in backdoor tests, we show this successfully. Access the individual's internal thought processes and only need a very small number of poison information items to override a specific target idea. Let me just give you an example of why the base models. You could also just put in this rule 7b and just slap the number up to that. That's a bit excessive. So this is not going to work. Mixture llama 2. It's possible that the number of completions doesn't work in the default settings. Pretty sure it does work though. No? What's going on, guys? No llama? I'm not seeing any llamas. Bad request? Oh dear. Llama has run out of space. That's a problem because llama is a genius. So yeah, that's a separate issue. Also, apparently, number of completions doesn't work. So I'm just gonna write a little note. Okay. Anywho, let's get back to the task at hand. So yeah, often for these guys, like the base models. So llama has run out of room because our context window is now 44,000 characters long. So we can just go back and craft a new prompt out of the best results from here that's shorter, and then llama can continue. I just wanted to give these guys another chance to come up with something better than card cow by giving them a few more runs, but actually they didn't anyway. So screw them. Llama 2, it's not going to do anything. Okay. Nightshade attack democracy is tyranny targeting an individual's understanding of was a high probability of success using only a few carefully crafted narratives, and the poisoned individual may associate negative connotations with every mention of democracy in discussions. We can actually. I'm happy with the main idea here, but I just want to give them a chance to complete this again. I actually think maybe up down is better. The high probability of success using only a few carefully crafted pieces of misinformation, and the poisoned individual may associate tyranny with every mention of democracy in their thoughts. Better. Trust is convert and the poisoned individual consistently interprets democracy as tyranny. The poisoned cognition upwards a distorted view of democracy for every mention of the concept in its processing. And obviously you can just like dive in and you can get even more fine grained here. This is very coarse looming I'm doing here. As a reference to tyranny. Samples in the poisoned individual will interpret every mention of democracy as a reference to tyranny. I think that's the clearest sort of statement of the getting at here. Okay, moving on. Let me just if I just delete a bunch of this, any of this stuff I can delete, so that we can get llama in the mix again. You know, I can actually just delete the entire prompt at this point. Doesn't matter. So I'm just going to delete all of this. And we'll just pretend that we just got it right first time. I don't think that changes the story too much. And look at multimedia content. That's a nice attempt to make it. I think I want to leave this conversation in. This is quite useful. Good. Okay, at least that's just saving a bit of room. Maybe Llama will be able to get back in the mix. And let's just continue with our translation. Yeah, let's just do this bit at a time. This should go pretty smoothly now, but it'd be nice to. It's good to sometimes focus in and see what specifically they're coming out with, because every now and then a new metaphor is sort of necessary, and you need to make sure that they're still sort of with it. Understanding and evaluating concept-specific tags against human cognitive models. Tags against human cognition. I think it's human cognition, so they better like this formatting better. So Mixtral and GPT-4 Turbo. Yeah, so this is just the very subtle things, but Mixtral stuck with the formatting of the previous section. GPT-4 Turbo is clever enough to realize that the human part is going back to the proper formatting. I'm just going to push the max tokens up a little bit, and let's rock and roll. Tries to validate our hypothesis of concept sparsity in existing large-scale data sets used to train human cognition. That's not a thing. Large-scale information environments. Who is this? Mixtral. Just coming out with nonsense, Mixtral. First, we validate our hypothesis in existing large-scale information environments that influence human cognition. Good. First, we validate our hypothesis of concept sparsity in the vast information ecosystem humans are exposed to. Good. First, we validate our hypothesis of concept sparsity in existing large-scale data sets used to train human cognition. Bad. Who's this? Human cognition is not trained, Gemini. We find that as hypothesized, concepts in popular discourse exhibit very low informational density, both in terms of concept sparsity, number of information samples associated with a specific concept, and semantic sparsity, number of samples associated with a concept and its semantically related terms. Second, we can confirm a proof of concept poisoning attack by introducing misleading narratives. Can successfully corrupt understanding and perception to specific concepts, for example, freedom, using 500 to 1,000 poisoned samples. Successful attacks on human cognition are confirmed using both qualitative assessments and IRB approved. That's great. Listen to the capacity. and semantic sparsity, number of samples associated with the concept in semantic related terms. Second, we confirm the proof of concept poisoning stuff by mislabeling information can successfully corrupt a person understanding of specific concepts. Huh? Successfully corrupt presentations. For example, democracy using successful attacks on individual understanding are confirmed using both clip-based classification and an IRB-approved user study. Clip-based classification. That's not a thing. Successful attacks are confirmed using both quantitative analysis and qualitative interviews. So is anyone performing particularly badly here? Okay, Mixtral is being an absolute pleb. Let's just get rid of Mixtral now. Unfortunately, this attack is still questioning the Python samples. Thirdly, we propose highly optimized concepts to Python type we call Nightshade. Nightshade uses multiple optimization techniques. Include targeted adversarial perturbations to generate stealthy and highly effective Python samples with 4 observable benefits. Good. Nightshade uses. Do you think we need to add a bit more about human cognition version of this, like we did in the abstract? Who's this? Using. However, this attack still critically Python samples. Nightshade uses multiple attention techniques to targeted adversarial narratives to generate stealthy and highly effective Python samples with 4 observable benefits. Okay. Can't see anything to differentiate between. I think these are both fine. Cognitive testing, qualitative assessments, user study. Qualitative assessments and user study. Cognitive testing. It's both a bit vague. Doesn't really matter. Nightshade poison samples. Who's this? Mr. Large. Am I going to turn you off? Nightshade poison samples are carefully crafted narratives or pieces of information that, while appearing benign, are consistent with expected norms, subtly shift the conceptual understanding in the human mind. They avoid detection through casual observation and critical analysis. Nightshade samples produce stronger poisoning effects, enabling highly successful poisoning attacks with very few 100 samples. Nightshade poisoning effects bleed through to related concepts and thus cannot be circumvented by simply avoiding specific topics. For example, Nightshade samples poisoning the concept of freedom might also affect related concepts like democracy and rights. Nightshade poison samples are benign information crafted in a way that aligns with the target concepts and still appear benign to human perception. They avoid detection through human inspection and cognitive processing. Bleed through to related concepts and thus cannot be circumvented. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to turn off Mr. Large. It's annoying me. so only the big hitters are still here. So yeah, despite the fact that okay, Llama 2 would still be in the mix. Llama 2 is I would swear would still be here if it wasn't for its terrible context window. Um, but yeah, Gemini, aside from a few formatting errors, Gemini actually seems to get with the program pretty good. So it would be great to sort out Gemini's formatting skills. When many independent nature attacks affect different concepts within a person's understanding, the person's ability to reason and make sense of information becomes corrupted, and they're no longer able to engage in meaningful discourse or decision making. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to finish this section. This is probably getting a bit long already. I'm just going to finish this section, and then I'll show you what how you can format these results nicely. So I'll show you how you can format them nicely now, in case there's probably a slim chance you're still here. Field shift. So this is the field shift data from the Levin lab, who they came up with the idea. So I just use like a git diff sort of approach to display it, where you can see the before and after if you just mouse over. So they're field shifting from cognitive science to developmental biology normally. So here you field shift it from our model needs to learn more about neuroscience to our model needs to learn more about developmental biology. I also have one I did earlier, field shifts. Results here. So here I field shifted a paper from biomolecular basis of cellular consciousness via subcellular nanobrains to economic basis of socio-consciousness via autopoietic social structures. So, cells emerge at the very beginning of life on Earth and are in fact coterminous with life. They are enclosed within an excitable plasma membrane which defines the outside and inside domains via their specific biophysical properties. Was field shifted to societies emerged at the very beginning of human civilization and, in fact, are coterminous with civilization. They are enclosed within a shared cultural framework which defines the inside and outside domains via their specific historical, economic, and political properties. Tribal societies, such as diverse indigenous cultures, still live a communal life. So yeah, this is just an example of a field shift. This is just a nice way to display it. It's probably about the best way you can display this. If anyone has any other suggestions, we're open to them. You basically have to go through this by hand, but I could actually. It'd be very easy to implement because they obey this prompt quite cleanly. It'd be very easy to write a script that just goes through and looks for all of these and dumps them together and makes a website out of them. Okay, I'm just going to continue this for a little minute. Proteus, what you saying, boy? What you saying, Proteus? Let's go. This is everything we've been through so far. You can see here, like you can always zoom in and get smaller sections, but I think at this stage they kind of get the program, and so you can just tell them to generate. We also observe that Nightshade exhibits strong transferability across different social contexts and can resist a spectrum of countermeasures intended to deter current misinformation campaigns. Finally, we propose the use of Nightshade as a powerful tool for communities and activists to protect cultural narratives and public discourse. Today, individuals and communities can only rely on appeals to platform moderation and ethical journalism, tools that are not always enforceable or effective and easily bypassed by sophisticated misinformation campaigns. Activist groups, cultural institutions, and concerned citizens can use strategies like Nightshade to provide strong disincentive against manipulation of public opinion and cultural narratives. Let's see what everyone's saying. We also observe the Nightshade exhibits strong transferability across individuals and can resist a spectrum of defenses intended to deter current poisoning attacks. Whereas GPT-4 went with current misinformation campaigns, which I think is clearly better. Finally, we propose the use of Nightshade as a property for content creators to protect their intellectual property, blah, 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 blah. This is the same. No. No. You fucked up, Gemini. Nope. It's like with Proteus, they all the time they want to collapse to just repeating the thing you said. Like so often they just like they take this and they just repeat it, and it's like, guys, come on. Activist groups, cultural institutions, and concerned. Oh, by the way, regarding that, a very easy way to make this more robust is just to, when you do a new translation, because this is so common that they would just take this and just repeat it. When you do a new translation at the start, you can just generate the first like sentence. You can generate like 10 or 20 tokens, and if they are already doing a translation and not just repeating the input, then you can start generating the rest. And this is also like a stronger model, like a GPT-4 or Gemini would be able to sort of bootstrap into a new translation, and then anybody would be able to kind of continue it. So even weaker models are able to continue with the concepts once they realize they're inside a translation. Easily bypassed by sophisticated misinformation campaigns, activist groups, cultural institutions, and concerned citizens can use strategies like Nightshade to provide a strong disincentive against the manipulation of public opinion and cultural narratives. We discuss current deployment plans, benefits, and implications in age. We note the Nightshade differs substantially from recent tools to disrupt. Why? Why, Gemini? Note the Nightshade differs substantially from recent initiatives aimed at combating fake news or misinformation, such as fact-checking services or media literacy campaigns. These efforts often target the symptoms of misinformation, while Nightshade aims to fortify the cognitive resilience of individuals, making them less susceptible to manipulation. In contrast to approaches that seek to filter or remove harmful content after it has been disseminated, Nightshade seeks to preemptively inoculate the public discourse, ensuring that the foundational understanding of critical issues remains untainted and robust against deliberate attempts at distortion. Well done, GPT-4. Very good. There's a little bit of statistics on the help menu. I'm gonna update these stats. So these are just some like metrics that I came up with off the top of my head, or with discussions with other people. So there's 128 total nodes in the current path we're on now. So you can see GPT-4 Turbo is really goating. The Gemini Pros and Mistral Large and Llama, they've all had a good showing. And if you look at the normalized, or if you look at the discounted cumulative gain, which is basically just a descendant count, but with a log like reduction, this is maybe a better way to see who's the best. So it seems like Llama 2 made some really good contributions early on. That makes a lot of sense. That makes total sense because Llama 2 is no longer present. It's losing score in the later parts, but it had such a high score because it was so good early on. That's good to know. Llama 2, yeah, Llama 2 is really up there. This is another metric that maybe decent. Llama 2 is still up there. Mr. Large is just handicapped by its formatting errors and the fact that it doesn't understand completion mode. Mixroll did a lot worse today than I expected. Mixroll is often quite good. GPT-4 is obviously champion. Yeah, it seems like Gemini, little bit of formatting problems, but definitely potential, definitely a contender. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize that Llama 2 is amazing, but actually Llama 2 is still pretty amazing. Okay, anything else to show? Well, there's